Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of our virtual summit on future of work. As we promised yesterday, today is going to be jammed-packed as we learn a little bit more about how company executives and various companies are enabling this remote work environment. First up, we'll hear from Stanley Toh at Broadcom, and he's going to talk to us about how they were able to transition to a remote work environment during this time of crisis. Second, we're going to talk to John O'Brien from Nvidia, and we're going to learn about how they have enabled a flexible work environment to ensure collaboration, whether that happens at home or at the coffee shop or at their amazing office spaces. Next, we're going to hear from Karen Dean at Under Armour. Now, she's going to talk to us about how they have enabled virtual events for both their partners and their employees to ensure their business is able to continue. And we're going to wrap it up with Tony Romero from the Jimmy Kimmel Live show. And he's going to talk to us about the behind the scenes of running a TV show all remotely. So before we get into that, a number of you have asked questions about where can we find all of the goodness from this virtual event afterwards. Is it going to be available on demand? The answer is yes. I encourage you all to go to the futureofwork.webex.com, where you will be able to find all of these sessions hosted on that website, plus a plethora of other good information. So with that, let's get into the goodness of today. I'm thrilled to be joined today with Stanley Toh, who is joining us from Broadcom to hear a little bit about their story. Stanley, how are you?
I'm good, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Stanley, we're thrilled to hear about your story about Broadcom and what you guys are doing in the realm of workplace transformation, also around the concept of remote work that we're hearing a lot about right now. Stanley, tell us a little bit about who you are and who Broadcom is before you go into the meat and potatoes to your presentation.
Okay. I'm the head of enterprise and user services and experience. I've been with Broadcom for nearly 25 years when we started as HP, and now we are Broadcom Inc. I run the services that touches every end user, from identity, access management, to all the collaboration, to their desktop, laptop, to all the end user support services, site support, executive technologies, end user training, communication. So basically anything that touches the end user.
You got your hands all over into making sure those end users have a good experience. And I think what's interesting is you guys are a big global company, and we're excited to hear about how you're enabling those good experiences with all those end users and what they're doing with a company like Broadcom. So with that, Stanley, I'd love to hear your insight and your presentation that you prepared for us today.
Thanks, Scott, for the opportunity for me to share the Broadcom story. So before I go into it, let me tell you something about Broadcom, because a lot of people don't know who Broadcom is, right? Because we are not in the mainstream consumer business, so we are always in the back end. So let me share a little bit about Broadcom. As you can see, we have over 50 years of rich heritage. We actually started in HP. And then in 1999, HP spun off Agilent Technologies, which is their test and measurement business. And then in 2005, Agilent divested the semiconductor division out, and we formed Avago Technologies, which we went IPO in 2009. Then over the years, to expand, we actually started acquisition. And one of our major acquisition, one of our first major acquisition was actually LSI, which has a long history stretched back, way back into the 1960s. And they were part of AT&T Bell Labs. And then in 2016, we acquired Broadcom Corporation. And we retained the name because of the brand recognition, and that's where Broadcom Inc. Came to be. And then over the next few years, we started a few other major acquisitions, 2017, we acquired Brocade. And then in 2018, we acquired CA Technology. And then the most recent acquisition that closed in November 2019 is the Symantec Enterprise Security Division. So right now, Broadcom Inc. is not just a semiconductor company, we are also now a software company. So we provide solution, end-to-end solution, not only the hardware from the endpoint to your data center, but we also provide all the security and connectivity right in the middle. Okay. Now, in 2019, we reported a revenue of $22.6 billion. And this doesn't even include the Symantec numbers yet. And we have a 71% gross margin with over 52% operating income. We have 24 business franchises, a huge IP portfolio, which gives us a very robust product portfolio. We have over 500 product portfolio with over 90,000 customers. Okay. Now, Broadcom, as you mentioned, is a global company. We have 28,000 employees across 159 sites and satellite offices in the across the 3 regions in 59 countries, right? For the Cisco collaboration suite, we have over 425 video endpoints. We average about 93,000 Webex meeting a month and roughly around 15.7 million participant minutes a month. That's our average for 2019, right? So enough about Broadcom, right? I want to share with you guys what we do for our transformation and what we look for when we do workplace transformation to enable the employees to be more productive and efficient and to be able to collaborate globally, right? So we look for a few things. The first one is frictionless experience. Everyone should have the similar experience no matter where they are. It has to be intuitive and easy to use. And it has to be reliable and it works every time I use it, right? If something is not reliable, you'll lose employee satisfaction. Secondly, we look for something that is easy to manage, low overhead administration and maintenance. It has to be able to scale. That's very important. If you look at the history, we have been acquiring companies. So we have to be able to scale quickly, able to deploy easily, right? And it has to be in a secure environment. If you look at collaboration today, a lot of important information, be it sales or finances, or even the R&D engineers discussing about engineering design and IPs, is all very sensitive information. So we need to have a very secure environment, right? And then we also look for something that we can integrate easily with our workflow automation. So this will reduce the overhead also, right? And obviously easy to manage and easy to have reports and statistics. Now, lastly, we also look for something that maximizes ROI. Time is cost. So if you save time, you save cost. That's very important, right? And then you want a tool that people want to use. What's the point of investing so much money in a tool that nobody wants to use, right? So it has to be easy so that people want to use it. Increase employee productivity and improve employee satisfaction. So that's what we look for, a solution when we go through workplace transformation. Okay. So let me share with you our journey with Cisco, right? How we transform our landscape across all our sites in the 59 countries. Now, it's not a short journey. We started way back in 2009. This is just after the 2008 recession, where cost is very important. So one of the way to reduce costs is video conferencing. So you don't have to travel, right? So we started with only 4 VC units. We started with that, and then we see the value. And if you look at the trend, year on year, we almost doubled our VC endpoints. And the acceleration of VC deployment increased when we started acquisition. If you look at the jump from 2013 to 2014, that's when we acquired LSI. With each acquisition, our employee count went up, our sites went up. Collaboration is even more important. So that's why you see the exponential growth. In 2019 is a key milestone year for us. We moved to Webex, the cloud solution. Now, when we moved to the cloud, I was able to retire our legacy infrastructure. So we don't have to have the on-prem MCU anymore. Everything is in the cloud. We also introduced the Webex personal meeting rooms. So you don't have to remember that 9-digit number that changes every time. And people love that, right? And one key point I want to call out is when we move to the cloud registered video endpoints, we moved 324 endpoints in 28 hours over just one weekend, right? I will not be able to do this if I'm on-prem, right? The number of servers I have to set up, the ports, the circuits, all those things, I will not be able to do that. But cloud gave me that flexibility. We also configured the video mesh and edge connect. That means I'm connected to the Webex cloud directly. That gave me the ability to do QoS via internet traffic. That means I can guarantee audio, video, presentation, the quality. People love the quality. And this gave me the ability to do that, right? We also introduced Webex 3000 for large meetings as the organization grow, right? The business unit have more and more people everywhere. The CEO all hands meeting, we have 3,000 people calling in. So we introduced Webex 3000 for those really large meetings. The other thing that we also very consciously look at is cost. So we make voice over IP as call priority because this will reduce my PSTN cost. We also integrate Google meeting scheduling into our Google Calendar. So people can easily schedule meeting with their Google Calendar. And then obviously the infamous one button join on all devices. People love that. You know, we made it so easy that the executive themselves can start their meeting without assistance. And that is important for everybody, right?
So easy now, an executive could do it, huh?
Exactly. They go into the room, the join button is there. All they need to do is click and boom, right? Because we struggle. And I think this is everyone have the similar experience. They struggle 5-10 minutes just to be on a meeting. But with this one button join, everyone is on the call, boom, immediately, right? And then with the latest acquisition of Symantec, we were able, because we are on the cloud, we were able to actually move their legacy Symantec VC onto the Broadcom system on day one itself. And that is huge, right? So
Stanley, I think this is interesting because you earlier set up the, when we're looking at any type of technology to bring in to help our employees be more productive, be more innovative, collaborate more, right? Transform the way they work, easy to use, easy to manage, and it has a cost savings to it or ROI around it. And you outlined that in this process of what you've been able to do from a collaboration perspective and standpoint. What's fascinating to me is by moving to the cloud, you just showed this example of an acquisition and how seamlessly you were able to bring video conferencing into that organization and manage it all without an issue because of that move to the cloud. That's phenomenal. That's amazing.
Exactly. Because the cloud gives me scalability, ease of deployment, and I don't have to wait for months for the circuit to go in before I can integrate that, right? And the team can be effective on day one itself and work together as one company on day one itself. That is huge for us, right? So to us, uh, collaboration is so important these days. Just to give you my March data, we conducted over 170,000 Webex meetings. And if you can see it, the statistic is 32 million participant minutes only in 1 month, right? And the beauty of it is because the voice quality is so clear, over nearly 60% of the employees, over 17.6 million minutes is over voice calls. And that is huge for us. Okay. Now, through all this, right, what is the benefit, you ask? So to reiterate what you asked earlier, Scott, there are two components to this when we move to the cloud. The first one is obviously the experience and management standpoint, and then the second is financial. So let me share with you, right? With the one global experience, everyone can start the meeting on any room, any site, on any devices. This is huge for end user experience. We have infinite scalability, be it adding new users, connection, endpoints, or meetings. We have a secure collaborative platform. And with the one control hub, it's easy to configure, manage, monitor, and troubleshoot. And as I mentioned earlier, right, 324 endpoints in 28 hours, right?
Amazing. Amazing.
It's amazing. Now, on the financial standpoint, we have seen a 2x growth in our workforce, but zero PSTN cost increase. As I mentioned earlier, very easy to integrate during M&A. The company can be on my platform on day one, right? And I don't have to wait for 6 months for a network circuit to be connected. And then lastly, we reduce up to 150 cubic tons of carbon footprint per QBR. Remember, we have 24 business units. In 1 year, that's 100 QBRs, not including the CEO, the sales, and all the functions. So this is huge saving for us. Now, carbon footprint is one thing. We also reduce on the amount of travel people need to do. Because how many times you fly 24 hours to a QBR and your portion is only 10 minutes. You present 10 minutes to the GM and you are done, right? But you spend 24 hours traveling, right? Now with the VC, they can hop on and off to present during their portion. And this not only reduce travel, it also increase productivity and employee satisfaction because they don't have to be away from the family. So that's huge for us, right? Now, there are some key success factors when we do a workplace transformation, right? In the Broadcom, it always starts with a vision. You need to know what you want to achieve. You want to know what is your endpoint? What is your end game, right? What you want to achieve. And then you go through the normal, you know, uh, solutioning, planning, and execution. And let me break this down for you. In the solutioning, right, you have to choose the right tool and the right solution with the right partner, all right? And then before you go shopping, make sure you secure your budget. You can have a perfect vision and the right tool, but if you don't have the budget, you can't execute. So make sure you get the executive support and secure the budget. And then, secondly, garner partnership internally and externally. You cannot do this alone. For a workplace transformation, you need to involve HR, you need to involve workplace services, legal, and all those people. So you have to collaborate with them closely. And then, obviously, choosing the right external partner is very important. You know, then you have to go into planning. Planning, I cannot say more. You have plan, and then do more planning. Make sure you have a solid project plan when you want to do deployment. Then you do your configuration and test. And after test, you can do your rollout. Now, during the execution phase, very important is to do marketing. Because if you don't market and communicate and train your users, what's having the perfect solution, but no one knows about it and no one uses it? So marketing is very important to us. And then you have to keep monitoring the experience. Get feedback from the user. How are we doing? Are we doing the right thing? It may not be perfect the first time. So that's why you look at our journey. It's 10 years. And over time, you keep getting back and refine the solution and you start the cycle all over again. So this is very important to us, right? Now, all this is well and state. I have very nice video conference setup in all the sites. Every site you go in, right, be it in San Jose, in the East Coast, in EMEA or APAC, every single room has the similar experience. They go in, they know how to start a meeting. But what's good is this in this time where suddenly everything changed. Right now, everyone is staying at home. Everyone is working from home, right? So what do we have to do to cope with this situation? It's a very unfortunate situation. No one planned for this. And seriously, we did not anticipate this will happen, especially globally. So how did we prepare for it? Absolutely nothing. We didn't do anything special. Let me tell you why, right? First is our cloud first tenant architecture. All of our collaboration tool, be it email, document sharing, conferencing, is already in the cloud. So that means I can scale very easily. The workforce can be in the office or at home. I can scale easily and still be effective, right? Secondly, we have a very solid VPN architecture. We have 15 gateways spread across globally. And important is we have VPN split tunneling. So that means only the network connectivity that requires on-prem data center access goes through the VPN. Anything that goes through the internet doesn't even come through my VPN circuit. So that is huge. So with this and the cloud first, we did not see a huge impact in our network traffic. Yes, there is increased bandwidth usage for people working from home accessing VPN, but the network bandwidth is only for those people who need lab resources, data center resources. Majority of the traffic, especially collaboration, goes through the internet. And then lastly, we have remote enabled security. That means all my laptop endpoints is I can manage them and I can secure them and I can patch them through the internet without them having to connect to VPN or be in the office, right? So we are fortunate that we have this architecture. So when the workforce shift from working in the office to work from home, there was no impact to us.
So Stan, I think what's interesting is I mean, this is very impressive. No one knew this was going to come or this was going to happen. This happened immediately. But what you're saying is because of the plans that you had put in place before and enabling a frictionless experience, whether you're in the office or out of the office or different offices in every type of room in the office. But having the same experience at home as well. It was how these teams communicate and collaborate together. Nothing for them changed, and you're saying there was a continuity plan of kind of work as normal, but wherever you are, which is fascinating because in some ways you mentioned you're a software company, but still a hardware company developing processors, right? So it's amazing how a company like you has enabled that, and be interesting to know to see if collaboration maybe has increased as a result of people working from home.
That's an excellent point. So let me show you how much our collaboration went up, right? Our Webex meeting increased by 86%. My average is about 5,500 meetings a week, but sorry, 5,500 meetings a day.
A day.
But if you look at it, when San Jose started, no, Northern California started the shelter in place, the meetings went up. If you look at the chart for March 13, it went up. And then when shelter in place was announced for globally, it shot up even higher. So we peaked on March 26 with over 10,000 meetings with 47,000 participants in one day. 2 million participant minutes. If you look at my average is 15.7 million a month, but this is one day itself is 2 million minutes. And over 61% of the traffic goes through VoIP. So that is huge for us. And we didn't have to do anything because by selecting the perfect partner, my collaboration was able to scale without Broadcom having to do anything. Now, if my solution is still on-prem, I will have ports problem, I will have circuits problem, I will have bandwidth problem. But because it's in the cloud, everything was able to scale. So this was very fortunate for Broadcom.
Fascinating. I'm curious to know how. So collaboration has just jumped dramatically as the shelter in place and everyone else around the world is in a lot of ways where possible working from home. How does that compare to something like email usage that you're seeing?
So from what our management console showed us, email is flat. So that means the number of people logging in, the number of emails sent and received, be it they are in the office or at home, is flat because they are able to access that. Actually, when I saw the statistic for last week, it actually increased slightly. It actually increased by about 10% more emails sent compared to the previous week. The reason is because everyone is working from home and we enable them to be able to work effectively. With the reduction in travel and less water fountain talk, they are actually more productive at home. They actually work longer hours. This is not something I wanted to say, but the statistic is showing that people are actually working, not only working effectively at home, but they are working slightly more at home than
Just
usual.
be careful of, right? Because as we go through
Yes.
this whole thing, we want people to to be with their family, to connect with
Hmm.
friends. But I think that is an that's an but the important thing is that you said is they're just as, if not more, effective in some ways. It sounds like from what you're seeing
Yes.
in getting work done by doing it that way. Interesting.
From the statistic we have been seeing, yes, they are as effective or even slightly more productive. And the second thing is because everyone is now working remotely, right? And you are in your own cocoon, collaboration is even more important. That's why you see Webex meeting increased tremendously because people still need to collaborate, to talk, to be effective. So that's why you see a 86% increase in Webex usage.
Amazing. Amazing.
Okay. Now, moving on to share with you, right? Transformation doesn't stop. Remember the circle that I was showing earlier is a continuous cycle. You always refine and look for ways to improve. So there's a few projects that we have for 2020, right? One of them is we're working in conjunction with the Cisco WebEx team and the Broadcom Blaze Meter team to do a network bandwidth capacity testing. So that you want to make sure that, when you order a circuit for a site or when we have a new acquisition, we have right sizing. You don't want to oversubscribe to circuits, right? And you don't want to undersubscribe either. So we are working with the Cisco WebEx team. We are in the configuration testing phase to do load testing for WebEx, and we can simulate, like a 3,000 people connection to the WebEx 3,000, how much bandwidth I need, right? We are also going to start our POC this month on WebEx calling with the Cisco BroadSoft team, right? And this will replace the legacy CUCM, on-prem CUCM. It will also enhance the end user experience when we introduce the WebEx team app. So that means calling and WebEx collaboration, and everything is integrated in one app. And I think that will enhance the experience. This will also give me scalability, and especially important is I'm able to bring any acquired company on my phone system on day one itself. Because right now, I have to, same thing, I have to wait 3, 6 months for a network circuits. And in some countries, network circuits connecting connectivity to pull that line in takes a long time. Okay? We are also bringing collaboration to the next level. Cisco have very good and robust uh, video conference system, right? The endpoint is excellent. Like, for example, DX80. Why use it just for collaboration? So what we are trying to do is to create virtual IT hub. So that means a user go up to a DX80 or a Dash Pro, and they can call an agent, and the agent is on video with them, right? And with the KVM connectivity, the agent, on the other hand, can take control of the laptop to do troubleshooting, re-imaging, reinstalling, patching, anything. So that means I don't have to have a physical presence in all the smaller sites. Remember, I have 159 sites in 59 countries. I cannot have people on the ground in all those sites. But with this, I can have physical, like a
Yeah.
physical hub on site for the people, right?
Wow.
And and I don't have to deploy an engineer to the site if I have a hardware break fix or troubleshooting, things like that, right? And I can avoid employee downtime. And I think this will enhance the employee experience too.
Love that idea. That's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. That is awesome.
Yeah. And then the last thing is this will be ongoing is real estate utilization. We will look for any underutilized space and maximize it to make it more productive. I'll give you an example. Cafeteria. When is it busy? Breakfast, lunch, and the occasional World Cup soccer matches. That's when cafeteria will be full, right? Other time it will be empty. So what we are doing is you have a lot of those booths in the cafeteria. We'll have either a Dastro or a RoomKit Mini in those booths where user can just grab any of the booth and collaborate and work from there. So maximize the space you have because real estate, as we know in California, is not cheap. Right? So these are the 4 projects that we are launching in 2020.
Love it. And I think this just shows, again, as you said, we're continuing to iterate and looking for ways to transform the way people work to get stuff done. And what, whether it's bandwidth testing, cloud calling, interesting ways to use collaboration devices to interact with IT tech support and get issues fixed, and then collaborate wherever you are, right? Enabling collaboration wherever you are in whatever type of space. Fascinating what you guys are doing. It's very interesting.
Thanks, Scott. So now, usually I'll open this up for Q&A, but we are in a very interesting time right now where everything is virtual. So, if they have any question, feel free to email me and I'll connect and answer as much as I can of our experience.
Stanley, this has been absolutely fascinating to have you come and share with us your transformation story. Not only the thought leadership of how you've been able to successfully help your employees work wherever they are and giving that agility and flexibility, but also showing us how you have responded to ensure that business continues in a time of crisis. I really appreciate your insight into what Broadcom has done to enable that. Stanley, thank you so much for joining with us today.
Scott, thanks for letting me share the story. And everyone, be safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Hello again, and welcome everyone to our continuing Workplace Transformation Virtual Summit. And now I'm really excited to be joined by our next guest, John O'Brien, who's the Vice President of Real Estate and Site Services at Nvidia. John, welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having us. Really excited to be part of the program.
Now, John, before we get into your session, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What makes you tick?
So I was a real estate developer in the private industry up until about 2008, when everyone knows the world ended from a financial perspective, and was contacted by a friend here at Nvidia who said, we're looking at starting to build some campuses, and we don't have anybody with any development experience. What do you think? So I, without anything better to do, I guess, I came up here and have worked closely with our CEO and CFO and COO to develop really change the environment that we work in. It's been very exciting. The company itself was already very established, but we were getting ready to break through and needed really to change the way we worked. And I got onto a train that was a lot of fun to be on, and been on it now for a little over 8 years. So
That is awesome. So John, I'm really excited to hear about the NVIDIA story of workplace transformation. Now, I know NVIDIA is known for being a computing platform company at the intersection of graphics, high performance computing, and especially around AI and ML. But what's fascinating to me is the culture of collaboration at NVIDIA. And even so much that that's been built into the office spaces. So really excited to learn a little bit more about that. So John, tell us more about the NVIDIA story and this culture that drives innovation.
We were a company that was founded in 1993, and it was founded by three gentlemen who were taking graphics from a software solution to a hardware solution and came up with the GPU, the graphics processing unit, and focused primarily on gaming. So as a company, we started out in a world where there was several other companies trying to do this, and but we had some real good insight, leadership, and design ideas. And since that time, we've grown substantially. I showed up in 2012, early 2012. We were about $4.5 billion company a year, doing very well, but just kind of mostly gaming. And at that time, we were in the mobile business. We pivoted into when computer acceleration started through the use of the GPU. We really pivoted hard and have led that industry, and that allows us to really take, because the GPU is a parallel compute platform versus a serial compute platform, you can take and iterate through big data pretty quickly once you accelerate the computing with the use of the GPU. And so with that, we grew exponentially. In the last 8 years, we've gone from about 3,000 employees to 1,300 engineers, almost 14,000 employees globally. We're $11.5 billion company annually now, a little bit more. You can see our credits here on the screen of some of the things we've garnished through as the company grows, but it really is driven by this desire to take our core product and really leverage it into industries that could really use the compute power of a GPU. And so very few can't take advantage of that, but there are some that really have readily adopted it quicker, and we've really taken off in that. Now with that comes, how do we change as a company? We were occupying buildings we were leasing that were built by spec developers. We were using furniture available at the time. They were all the 8 by 8 by 70 inch cubicles. Nobody knew who was there at any given time because you couldn't see anybody. And part of the troubles with that kind of format for us is our product is art and science. It's got to work from a science perspective. The algorithm has to be correct. The electron flows across the transistors have to work correctly. The architecture has to work right. But the software stack on top of that have to also, it's creating the physical world in a rendered environment that's believable. And that's really complicated mathematics. And so it really is this, we have teams across all sorts of disciplines in terms of the hardware engineer, the software engineer, the sales guys getting feedback from the customer, our operations folks setting up and fabricating what is needed, and then the sales guy delivering it to the customer. And so with that, we really surround each product with a team, and the team can be really large, 300-400 engineers spanning the globe. We have engineers in India, engineers in Europe, engineers throughout the United States and APAC. And so these teams have to be able to work together and work together seamlessly. And so when we started to build this campus, Jensen, our CEO, said, I have a vision in my head. I need you to help me make it real. And it was about, how do you create a space that allows for these collisions of ideas that creates the next innovation? And I think everyone's heard this casual collision concept, but it really, we started with the first principle of our project was a study out of MIT from Dr. Tom Allen, who said if you work in the same building on the same floor, your chance of running into a coworker is 96%. If you separate by a floor, it drops to 6%. If you separate by a building, it drops to 0.04% or something. And Jensen said, I need my guys to bump into each other. I need them to say, I've been thinking about something, and then you're the guy I need to talk to. So we started out to build a building that was as much a single floor building as we could, with the constraints of, I don't want to take all my land for one building. I want to be able to use more. So we went after looking at how do we keep the spaces open? How do we keep them connected? How can you have sight lines and stairways that keep people on top of each other so they know where everybody is? And there's this chance of this connection, right? So he said it doesn't have to cost a lot. It's got to be smart and honest. And that's kind of our core vision when we started. And you see the rendering of the full build out of the two sites below here. And it really is, we're done with the first one to the left. We're under construction, the one on the right. And in the middle is about a 4-acre park that we can work in and collaborate in as well. So that's a vision too. First thing started out with, he says, I want my lobbies to be the point of entry for all my employees. I don't want people coming in the back way or going out the back way. He said he had this vision of Bloomberg, which was in New York. If you've ever been there, they've got the big staircase or escalator in the lobby. Everybody in the building is coming and going from the same place. And he wanted that to be the single point of entry, because there's an opportunity for everybody to be seen or see somebody, and you just feel the energy of the company as people are moving around. So that was the first principle, and we had to figure out how to do that in our current building. The new one, we have it in the middle of the building, which is unique, but it comes up the center, and everyone comes and goes through that space, and it really does create this opportunity for connection. And these are some more examples of spaces that not just here in Santa Clara, but globally, we're taking the same principles and introducing them globally in our portfolio as we redo our space or take new space. So it's still this idea of a single point of entry so I can be seen by somebody every single day. That's the key. And then there's this creation of the we space. And I got to say, when I got to the company, we were still in these old spec developer buildings. We had no we space. We had cubicles and we had meeting rooms and really nothing more. And those are the two typologies we worked in. If you weren't in a meeting, you're in your cube and you didn't know the guy next to you was there because the wall's so high. What we did was open the space up, and we created these places where people could go work in a different format. And to do that, we had to bring in collaborative tools we didn't possess. In the past, meeting rooms had a projector, so you only presented and spoke to the people in the room with you. Now, because the campus has gotten so big and because we've expanded our footprint globally, you got to be able to communicate effectively to those not in the room. And so it really put a pressure on our IT team, and they've done a great job of finding the tools we need to collaborate across the campus, across time zones, and across countries. And so this we space gives you the opportunity to sit down and work independent. It allows you to sit down and collaborate with people not next to you, but somewhere else. It took us a while to adopt these because we weren't used to them, quite honestly, but now we've been doing this for a couple of years. These are so valuable, these spaces. You can see in this.
And John, I'll just say,
sure.
as you're scrolling through these, I mean, they're beautiful. I mean, they're inviting. It's a place where it seems like people want to be, want to come, want to congregate. But you've made it not just so it looks nice, but there's a purpose, right, behind
everything we do has a purpose. Our CEO is very intentional, and so the check-in for us all the time when we do a new project is, what was the first principles? What were you trying to accomplish? And then how do you measure the success? And you can fail, but fail fast and change. And that's his drive. He wants to push the envelope to find the environment that allows the creativity in our engineers and our employees to thrive. This is their life's work. Let's make it a great place to do their life's work. And so we are trying all sorts of new techniques, certainly trying a whole host of new collaborative tools, but it was necessary. We had to do that in order to really drive this company forward and allow people to work seamlessly as these large teams that span the globe. So you've got to be able to collaborate with somebody in Germany or New Jersey or here or India or APAC and do it in a way that's effective, that you can see what's being written on the board, see the people you're talking to, and really get the concepts across. And in that, given the current environment we're in, we were able to pivot as a company, quite honestly, almost seamlessly. Before we had these tools, we wouldn't know what to do. We would have to do calls, and it would have been, I couldn't imagine us working in this new shelter-in-place environment with our old tools. Because we made this decision as a company to change our environment, and in so adopting these collaborative tools, they become ubiquitous. We use them every single day. So when it came time to say, we got to stay home and work. How are we going to do this? It's easy. You open up a Webex, you have video conferencing. Every meeting is the same as it is everywhere else. We just are sitting at home versus some of us in the conference room. And we've been able to continue to work as effectively as we can given the constraints, but it hasn't been a problem. It's because we made this change 8 years ago and have really become familiar with these tools and how we use them. So
and I love that, John. I was just going to say, I love that. So because before you mentioned about, the beginning of the workday, people come into this this lobby, right? And it's a single lobby where everyone comes in. And then you mentioned about the collaboration and the tools that they're used to. They can use that at home, but in a sense, when you turn on the video elements of that, you have a virtual lobby where you're meeting people and discussing with people and whoever that might be. That's an interesting way to think about that too. Is you have a virtual lobby moment wherever you're at. Well,
that's it, and part of one of the first principles of the big open expansive space that's very visual connected is I want people to run in and see each other and say, I've got an idea. But I can tell you just from anecdotally for me personally, I can't go into this building and not see someone that I've been meaning to email or just have a quick conversation about something that I got in my mind. I see them, we interact, and it gets resolved or gets progressed immediately. It really works. When you see the people you work with, and as we get larger, that's harder to do. It's amazing how much work and collaboration occurs at the cafe, walking through the lobby, getting a cup of coffee. So those kinds of opportunities we've created through a little bit of social engineering by where you place them and that sort of thing, that even the most introverted engineer sitting who wants to be left alone, he's got to go to the restroom and he's got to get a cup of coffee once or twice a day. We put those in spaces where you're going to run into other people, and it creates this opportunity. And I think we've done a really nice job. And like I said, it took us a while to really learn how to use these spaces. We were not a company that had these kind of places. And by creating them, it took maybe a year that people really started to leverage. I can go work, and I'm showing an image here. This is up in a bar that we have in our building. It's a coffee bar during the day. But so many people come here and work that aren't assigned to this building. I mean, one of the principles that Jensen talked about was, hey, could you imagine if we had a building that sat 2,000 or 2,500 people, but there was 4,000 people working in it at any given day because it was a great place to be? And that's what we have. This has become the place that people come and they can find the area that suits their work style, whether I want to be isolated, whether I want to sit with people, whether I want to have a conference call or a video chat with somebody somewhere else. There's so much opportunity, and people have really, really taken advantage of it. And again, it was a combination of create the physical space, but then give them the tools they need to do their work on top of it. And that combination has created an environment that has really it delighted people. It's created great creativity in our teams, but it allows our teams to really work seamlessly. And again, like I said, our teams are big. And because it's open space, I don't need to move them from building A to building C if they're all in one building. If they're working on a new project, because we tailor our teams, we move the people around all the time because they focus on product, not necessarily on what they do from a siloed perspective. They can change, and they change all the time. They can change teams without having to change location. We just need to then give them the tools that they can continue to work with the team they're working with today. And we make those changes all the time.
So John, tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's interesting as a culture that has been implemented with Nvidia. Of you mentioned people changing teams all the time. What's the environment like? Are people reporting into a certain manager and they stay with that manager, or does that? It sounds like what you're saying is the reporting changes based upon the project that's happening.
We are so nimble as a company, which is unique for a company at one, our age, and two, our size. We look for the opportunities when a new product comes out and we get feedback from customers and we see an opportunity. We reassign people to these opportunities all the time. They change their matrix manager all the time. It's constant, but it's because they get excited about the product line they're in or the outcomes they're trying to drive. It really becomes, this is the way we view it, and it seems a little cliche, but we're doing our life's work here. And how fun can that be? So let's create a place that's fun to do your life's work. And your life's work can change a little bit by what are the new product offerings? I mean, like I said, I started this building, we were in the mobile chip business, in the phones. We're not in the phone business anymore, but it doesn't make a difference. The building works well because the products we're in today need the same type of teams and shifting of teams. The first principles were sound, and so the building itself is still relevant as it was when we started. And again, you can see this is across our platform. The one on the left is a building in our portfolio overseas. And so you see there's a similar language, but more importantly, there's a similar environment that people can really find places other than their desk. Now, they don't look at their desk as the only place to do work anymore. That is the old way of thinking. Now it's, I can do work anywhere, and I can get my team and go sit in these chairs, and we can swarm a problem, but not over the top of cubicle walls, but together at a table that we could just go grab instantly. We don't have to book it. We don't have to, it's available to us. And so we have all sorts of opportunities for this. And that's what the intention was. And then, again, this is some more of the spaces that we've created. Again, all of it is pretty honest and simple. It looks really cool, but that's the steel support that you see in the picture to the left. That's the roof decking you see exposed. We just keep it honest, and it makes it, so again, it doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be smart. And so through that, we create all these wonderful locations that people can work outside their cubicles. And like I said, we have so many people that work in the newer buildings that don't actually have a seat in those buildings, and they work there every single day because they enjoy the environment, and we want to create opportunity for them. And the one on the left there is actually the bar, and we didn't have a bar on campus intentionally for a long time, but we did this in hopes to spur some collaboration and getting people together as a family. And so every weeknight at 5 o'clock, the bar opens, and we have beer and wine. And this place packs out, and it is the greatest place for collaboration anywhere on campus at any time. You get systems engineers working with real estate guys, sitting down having a beer, talking about what do you do, how can we work something together, how can I help you out. You've got software guys talking to hardware guys, talking to operations, talking to sales. It is the most collaborative place on campus, to the point where when we started the second building planning, our CEO said, "Where's the bar in the new building?" And I said, "We have one. Do we need two?" He said, "Yes, we need two." So this is what we've got coming into the new building as well. We're going to have a place that people can really sit down and relax and spend time with family. And that's really what we are in NVIDIA culture-wise. It's a big family that we're trying to really do some really spectacular things through the product offerings that we have. Now, of course, we miss all this right now. We're having to live, but quite honestly, we're super effective. I mean, because we set ourselves up with the right collaborative tools, really thoughtfully approached how we want to answer these questions for those that aren't sitting in the room with us or are not in the same country with us, but how do we effectively work with them? Because we went down that whole process 8 years ago, and we continue to iterate on it, we're able to work today really as effectively. We can sit down, I can have the same meeting with my team and see everyone's smiling faces, and it's just as if we're in the same room, and it's done pretty quickly. I hope we go back soon to this environment, because it's a lot easier to have those hallway conversations without having to schedule a Webex meeting, but it certainly has been very effective even in this very difficult time. So that was the plan. I think, have we finished? No. I think we'll see some changes coming out of this shelter in place and this COVID experience. We'll see some changes to it. But I think we're on our way to really developing the environment that's best for us. And we're really excited about it.
Amazing story. And, to the point where you talked about, like, the environment we're in now, where there's so many people who are working, and just out of the blue from home. You guys created a culture that when that need arose, you were able to make what appears to be a fairly seamless transition. Perhaps not the ideal that it was imagined, right? But still been able to get work done. I'm curious to know, you mentioned Webex and the use of Webex. Have you seen that increase? What are you seeing?
Yeah, our metrics, and I wish I had them. I meant to get them before we had this talk, but our traffic across the Webex is up several 100%, because what would normally be a single meeting with 35 people, 30 of them in the room, 5 coming in off of Webex, now is 35 people having to get into the meeting. We had a little bit, bandwidth issues like for the first day or two, but we've really, our IT team pivoted really quickly and did a spectacular job. We are literally having seamless meetings now. Everyone's gotten used to the cadence. I almost feel like I'm working harder because I'm able to sit here at my computer all day long without taking a break. But it really has been a super effective, and it's been a really simple pivot because, again, we have used these tools every single day for the last 5 or 6 years, and they're just normal course of business. So to be able to do it from home, I like to commute better. I'd rather be in the room with people, but I certainly like to commute in the morning better.
But yeah, and what I think is awesome is whenever this current environment ends, right? People are going to go back to the office. Maybe not everybody, and maybe it opens it up from a flexibility perspective of coming into the office or working from home or working at the coffee shop. You've created an environment that's flexible for people to do both, and what appears to have a seamless experience. Not only just whether they come into the office or not, but when they're in the office, the spaces in those environments, it's the same seamless experience. You had a Webex board, you had a Webex Room Kit Mini, all of it a same experience that people are familiar with to get their jobs done.
Yeah, I mean it is, and I think we're slow adopters. We always felt like we need to be in the same room together, working on the same problem and swarming, and that's kind of our nature. And I think by creating these spaces, it showed I don't need to be in the room. I can be on a Webex conference call with you, and I could be sitting in the same building, but in a better location for me. And it's just as effective. I think to your point, I think we've learned we can do more work effectively without having to sit in the same room. And I think as we come out of this current environment, we will see a lot more work from home, work from other locations, because we've really understood now how this works effectively. And it's kind of a proof of concept that we didn't intend, but we've been through, and it works very well. Yeah.
And the other thing I'll mention, John, that I love about the Nvidia story is it's groups coming together to ensure success of the business and to ensure that innovation. Right? You've talked about HR, you've talked about culture, you've talked about costs and finance, you've talked about IT, and you've talked about real estate. All these groups coming together to enable successful collaboration and a culture that drives innovation. I think I don't know if there's anything you want to say specifically about that, but that to me is fascinating.
Well, it is. There are no one team member more important than the other. It takes a family to make this all work. And that starts at the top. He believes that strongly. And that's why it's so important that we are able to lean and connect and collaborate with everybody. And it takes from sales to HR to real estate to engineering across the board to make a product successful and to make a company successful. It takes everybody working together, and to create the opportunity through collaborative tools to work together is what makes it successful. And so I feel really blessed and have enjoyed where we've come. Do we have a lot more to do? Absolutely. That's the fun part of it. We're never done. We keep working, but I think we're definitely in the right direction.
Love it. Well, John, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us about NVIDIA's, workplace transformation and the future of work, where you envision work going. And I think it's a very unique insight into how you've structured the organization as well as the real estate spaces to ensure that collaboration happens. So, John, thank you so much for being with us and sharing that story with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hello again, and welcome everyone to our continuing workplace transformation virtual summit. And I am thrilled to be joined today by Karen Dean, who's the senior manager of Under Armour. Karen, how are you? And welcome to our virtual summit.
I'm great. Thanks so much for inviting me to participate in this. Really thrilled.
Karen, the Under Armour is such a great name. And before we get into your story, we want to learn a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I've been around a long time. I've been at Under Armour for just about 2 years now, managing the collaboration technologies team. Before coming to Under Armour, I spent about 20 years at Black & Decker, another great global brand in its space, managing all of the telecommunications globally and kind of at that time, right, that version of collaboration and telecommunications. So it's been great. I'm a Maryland native. Went to school and studied English and journalism and ended up in IT.
That's just the typical path, right, to get into
Exactly.
the type of your career.
Right, right.
Well, we're thrilled to have you join us, and I think the thing that's so interesting is Under Armour is such a very recognizable brand name, household name, right? Known for its performance in apparel and footwear, but there's so much innovation. You know, as you and I have talked before, there's so much innovation that is happening at Under Armour, and it's kind of part of the brand, of the performance and the innovation that happens in collaboration and the workforce. You're trying to tie that part of the brand together with what these people experience. So we're excited to hear your story, and with that, Karen, we'll let you take us away.
Well, really, thanks again to you and to Cisco for inviting me to be a part of this. It's really exciting. I think we've got a great story to tell. The story began obviously long before I started at Under Armour, but I think it's really been a great journey for me, and I know leading up to that as well. So first, a little bit of a history lesson. Under Armour was founded in 1996 by Kevin Plank, who at the time was a football player at the University of Maryland and was really not happy with the the comfort and performance of his cotton t-shirts. So he created, in the basement of his grandmother's house in Washington, D.C., the original Under Armour shirt, which really just launched a global brand. And so for the 24 odd years since then, the brand started with innovation, and everything about the company is around innovation, both in our product area and also in our our global connected fitness communities with the MyFitnessPal and MapMy collection of applications. We have an amazing community of athletes that we serve. We sell Under Armour products in over 100 countries, and we're at about 14,000 teammates globally. So a lot of growth in those 24 years. I love this slide because it really it really articulates our corporate strategy and the 4 pillars of our corporate strategy. Obviously, starting with product, deep insights into our athletes. We have articulated the focused performer as our kind of the athlete profile that we aim to serve. Everything we do is really around making products that are going to make the focused performers life better and make and contribute to their performance. Our story obviously is how we bring that product to life, using all the social platforms that we use, a collection of strategies that comprise our go-to-market method, and really help to scale and tailor our brand and how we deliver our brand across all of our global regions. Service is obviously where the rubber hits the road. It's where the promise of our brand really is delivered and turned into reality, and where we really are able to convert transactions into relationships with our athletes. And the best part of this obviously is the team pillar, because a really core part of Under Armour's foundation is that we can't make athletes better unless we serve our teammates, and empower all of our teammates to do what they need to do in their roles to drive performance by that focused performer. So it's really great, and I love the fact that in this text it talks about global collaboration, because that's really, you know, kind of the link that that my team has to the brand and to the customers that we're really trying to serve. So my job and my team's job really is connecting those teams all across the globe, really trying to build immersive, engaging experiences for all of them, and really enabling our teammates to get their job done from anywhere, so that they don't have to be in any particular location or using any particular set of technologies to get their work done. We had a few challenges, as you can imagine, to kind of deliver on that connecting global teammates promise. In 24 years, to go from a single employee to 14,000, really exponential growth across the years. And it's very difficult, as I'm sure a lot of you know, when you get big fast. A lot of things kind of you put a lot of band-aids on, and you're so focused on building that at some point you kind of have to stop and look around and say, oh, okay, we need to now you know, mature other parts of our foundation so that we can continue to scale at the level that we need to. So in the early days of our collaboration portfolio, it literally would take 10 to 15 minutes to get a meeting started. You know, the whole thing. Are you there? Yeah, I'm there. I can hear you. Can you hear me? No, Susie's muted. John, what? You know exactly how this goes. And it was really complicated by the fact that we didn't have a single solution. So not everybody was kind of coming into a meeting from the same place or in the same way. We had some technology that's really premise-based, other technologies that were cloud-based, and so that really created its own set of challenges in being able to integrate into a smooth, kind of unified appearance of what we were delivering. It was also very difficult to integrate one application into the other. We had a lot of silos of technology that people needed to try to figure out what they should use. They had to understand too much about the technologies, and when really all they just wanted to do was get the work done. So our collaboration team introduced the UA Huddle brand several years ago, and it's really it was really created to create just a unified view of how we really think about what we're doing and how we're doing it. So now every person, wherever they are, they don't really need to think about the technology. They think about the UA Huddle, which is really the portfolio of technologies that we use.
So Karen, I think it's interesting that basically, you know, as you mentioned, as part of the strategy of Under Armour, the teamwork and enabling the teams to collaborate globally is such a critical part. But to the point where I haven't heard of many organizations in the sense that have kind of branded their collaboration like you guys have with the UA Huddle and the focus and bringing the employee together to make it so they can get work done, right? That's just what we're trying to do, and you guys have branded it as such. It's really interesting to hear.
That's exactly that was exactly the goal of kind of creating this. And even today, you know, if you walk into you know, people talk about the Huddle box. They don't talk about, and they talk about the iPad. They talk about they don't talk about the codec or the cables or the Webex. They'll say, we're going to have a huddle, not we're going to have a Webex. We're going to have a huddle. And it's actually interesting because sometimes it's difficult if a teammate logs an issue at our service desk. they don't really, it's difficult for the service desk person to understand how to classify the issue because the teammate just thinks about it as UA Huddle, and they don't really differentiate the components, really, or the application from the equipment that's delivering the application. And so it's kind of an interesting challenge that we created for ourselves, really, but I think for all the best reasons. So our vision really for UA Huddle is to have the technology be human-centric, to really deliver frictionless technology that really lives up to the innovation and the promise of our brand. And that's really how we, everything we do, every feature that we, think about deploying, this is really how we gauge it. We really match everything up to, is it going to be frictionless? Does it help us deliver does it help us deliver the brand in our own way, in our own collaboration stack? This is a kind of a busy chart here, but it's meant to kind of show our landscape, right? We have three different call manager clusters in different regions that are all networked together. And globally deployed a little over 400 or so video codecs across these locations. And what's overlaid here is the view of how we have improved our technology stack so that we've driven down the time it takes to start a meeting. I mean, we're into like 5 seconds now. We've dramatically increased the number of meetings, attendees, meeting minutes. But on the other side, the efficiency of those meetings has improved to the point where the length of each meeting is getting shorter. And we can actually calculate kind of what the time savings has been for that. So it's been kind of a great look over kind of across a few years of using Webex kind of as the engine behind all of this. And at this point, we have a lot of standardization in our environment. We're 100% standardized on Webex, on a certain portfolio of video codecs. We have classified all of our different conference rooms according to a set of standards. So we have a specified bill of materials for each type of room. So it's a very standardized implementation, which obviously makes things simpler to deploy, to train, and to support. 100%, one button to push. People literally walk into the room, they press the green button, and everyone is in the meeting. So I think that's been a really big win for people, because now they don't need to enter a number. They don't need to know what the number is. So it's been really recognized, I would say, across the company, kind of the incremental improvements that we've made in this stack through the years. Even though we had standardized our conference room stack and our meeting stack globally, we were still missing what I would call the glue between all of that. We had Webex, we had in-room video units, we were still using Jabber for calling and messaging, obviously Outlook Exchange for email, et cetera. And my team knew that Webex Teams could be sort of the glue that tied all that together. Obviously, in addition to adding its own differentiating capabilities and features, we also knew it could be a way to simplify even further what people were doing. And one thing I should have mentioned is that part of our company actually uses Slack. The the part of our company that manages the fitness applications is really a legacy Slack user. So then we had people who were, you know, in one part of the company, you know, they would also want to have, they'd have a Jabber account, and they'd also want to have a Slack account so that they could talk to the people that were on Slack. So we found ourselves kind of building up this dual stack of technologies, which we knew we had to stop that. So we had this grand plan to introduce Webex Teams. We had a really great promotional event and series of events really wrapped around the launch. We had UA Huddle mouse pads made. We had, you know, office hours in the cafeteria where we would teach people. We had this whole several week long and even a couple month long rollout plan scheduled to introduce Webex Teams, which we did on March 2nd. We rolled it out globally on March 2nd. So this is kind of a simplified view of our ecosystem. Obviously, some of the non-real-time components of our stack are around with email and digital signage, broadcasting, video broadcasting capabilities, and some other things, but really focusing on kind of all the real-time components over on the right-hand side. Now we knew that everybody, you know, could just live in Webex Teams. We had federated it with both Jabber and Slack. And so now, regardless of what tool you were in, whether you used Jabber still, or you used Slack, or you used Webex Teams, everybody could kind of communicate in the app that they lived in. And we didn't have to keep kind of building up these multiple stacks. So we had a great promotion. Everybody, you know, the initial launch went really well. And we had get some really good press about it. People liked it. And then came March 12th, which turned out to be Under Armour's last day in the office for all of our corporate offices. And we all started working virtually 100% of our time.
Big change, right?
Big change. So yeah, we literally implemented it just in the nick of time. And if we could only say we were so smart, we were smart enough to have known that. But kind of the numbers on this graph aren't all that important, but they're representative of the huge increase in usage that we have seen both in Webex meetings and in Webex Teams. You can kind of see an initial bump early in February, which is where we got a bunch of our super users on to Teams, and then our launch at the beginning of March, and our remote working launch in the middle of March. So it's kind of like a you know, be careful what you wish for kind of situation. And I wouldn't have wished this situation to drive this kind of adoption at all. But it might be true that, you know, sometimes it takes a crisis to really drive adoption of something new like this. So then some of the other things that we've been doing that we always knew that we would get to, but have kind of accelerated through this, are a lot of opportunities to help our teammates really convert some of a lot of in-person type events that we often do into virtual events. So that's been very very interesting and challenging, and my team and I have learned a lot about that. I'll talk a little bit more about that because we're kind of being rushed into some of the next steps and kind of what's next on our roadmap, even as we speak. Obviously, more flexible work arrangements. With everybody working at home, we've really been converting, helping people understand a lot more about how to use kind of the tools they took for granted, and even really driving through all really learning a lot more than they thought they would initially about, on Webex Teams. Doing a lot of our large events in a more virtual mode. One of the things that we're working on right now is twice a year we have large sales meetings where typically hundreds of people would be flown in from all over the world into our headquarters in Baltimore, into our big theater, and for a week-long event they would learn about an upcoming product release. So we're usually about a year out in our product design. So now they would be learning about the spring summer 2021 line. Well, obviously nobody can travel to Baltimore, but the show must go on. So we've been working with the commercial team and the marketing team to transform what is always a just highly produced, 100% immersive with fashion shows where people model the new apparel, athlete visits, all kinds of really energizing and inspirational events, really turning those into virtual events. So we're going to be using, everything will be on the back of the Webex platform. We'll be using Webex meetings to drive a lot of content sharing, content delivery, application sharing, where we'll be using our 3D samples application to kind of take the place of using those physical samples, and then delivering our high motion videos as part of the event. Following on to that, because typically right after these events, we begin our sales teams around the world begin their sell-in meetings to their customers and stakeholders, which in most parts of the world at that point will still be held virtually. So we'll be actually, Cisco's helping us create some custom training for all of our sales folks, and Cisco will be training them over the next month or so in many different sessions, not just how to use Webex, but really how to take the content and the types of information that they need to share, and really deliver a very customized, targeted training to get these folks comfortable with how to present this kind of content in a virtual way, and also how to help their viewers if their viewers have any kind of glitches or issues as they're trying to view and participate in the meeting. So those are some things. Yeah, go ahead.
And before you go into your fourth point here, I think you look at these first three columns that you've just talked about, right? An unexpected event that made everyone remote and work remote, unexpectedly having to then somehow figure out how to do virtual events that really were never designed to be virtual, a highly immersive environment where you fly hundreds of people in.
Right.
And then the same with the selling aspect of it. But you've been able to deal with it, and business has been able to continue in a way that you really never would have expected or thought of before. But right. Business has continued, and to me that's incredible. I keep seeing this cartoon little or question that pops up with a cartoon behind it that basically says, which C-level executive caused you to implement your transformational, digital transformation, workplace transformation efforts? Was it the CEO? Was it the CIO? Or was it the COVID-19 effect, right? And I think what we're seeing is this massive acceleration to transformation because of this crisis that we're in. And what you've outlined here is really telling in that regard. And yet you've been successful so far in rolling that out. Tell us a little bit more about that that surprise and how this has been so far.
Yeah, it's been, it's sort of like a tidal wave that washed over our team almost before we knew it. Yeah, I don't even really, I haven't really stopped long enough to even be able to think it through myself. But I honestly think that, I mean, I think, we'll all go back to our offices, but I think that this experience will change a lot about how work gets done in the future, and how flexible people can really be in just adapting to massive change in their personal lives and their work lives. I think it's going to be different. I don't really know how yet. I think it's going to be different. And I think the fact that we have gone 100% virtual so quickly, and as one of our executives said recently, without missing a beat, I think it's going to be different. I think we're going to be be using a lot more flexibility in how we work and doing a lot more virtually. I think it's really going to open up the possibilities in ways that we haven't anticipated, and probably, the light bulbs, I think, will continue to kind of go on over time, and even after we go back into our offices.
Yeah, I mean, you in some of these slides you showed pictures of what the office looks like, right? That environment you're trying to create when people come into the office. And man, how impressive and cool would that be to be able to come and work in that environment? Yet you've shown that work can be done virtually. And so when the time comes to go back into those environments, that seamless transition and being able to work wherever you need to get work done, and then going into the office and finishing that work, or working on different things and going into rooms and having, conversations and collaboration with collaboration technology should be a seamless event, right? Seamless experience throughout that whole process.
Exactly.
And maybe that leads into your fourth point, and then where the office is going, plus the overall collaboration is going.
Sure. Yeah, in our offices, as I mentioned earlier, that we have we have a great partnership with our corporate real estate organization, and we really partner with them in establishing our standards, our technology standards, so that when they build a new building or they refurbish one of our corporate offices, it really is a pretty straightforward process. It's very repeatable. And all of our offices are then outfitted with, very similar landscapes of technology. One of the things that our technology now gives us the capability to do is even work a little more closely with our real estate partners in really kind of getting into the under the covers of, well, how are the rooms being used? What is the occupancy rate of conference rooms? And not just what is the booking rate, but what is the real occupancy rate of conference rooms? So we really envision being able to use a lot of the analytics and AI that's now in our codex to really measure and look at, well, how many people are typically in the Phoenix conference room that can seat 25 people. It could be that, usually only a half a dozen people are in there, and other people, the rest of the participants are in some other room, or they're virtual or from wherever. So I think we're going to infuse a lot more intelligence in how we strategically design our offices going forward. So I think that has a lot of potential, and probably like anywhere else, there's always contention for conference rooms, right? You can never find one when you need to book it, and then once you can't book it and you're huddled in a corner, you walk past a room that's booked but nobody's in it, and so it's just kind of this constant source of frustration. So I have this vision that we're going to be using intelligence and codex, and say that if somebody isn't in the room 10 minutes after the meeting is supposed to start, free up the room, cancel the booking, free up the room, and let somebody else go book it. So we're not quite there yet, but that's where I think we're headed. The other thing that we'd like to do is use the collab technology to really help integrate into some of our other building utility services like HVAC, or the touch panels that can measure oxygen levels. I mean, we're about athletes. We're about a healthy lifestyle. So we'd like to be able to use a lot of these things to really kind of share intelligence with some of the other building facilities systems. So I think we have a lot of great potential there with our corporate real estate team and facilities team to kind of have some great new partnerships there. But yeah, awesome. Our offices are great locations. They're beautiful. They're very energizing. They really immerse all of us every day into the spirit of the brand. And I miss my offices. I miss my office. Not that I have an office, but I miss being in my building and seeing people and having that inspiration. So one day.
Great. So Karen, tremendous. I mean, I love seeing what you've done and the work that your team has put into enabling the collaboration to take place in a crisis, but also what you've done before and where you're going, right? You've basically given us a taste of the future of where Under Armour is going. We talk about this transformation that has to happen. This isn't just IT. It's not just real estate. It's not just HR or finance, right? It's a combination of all those groups working together. And then when you talk about the future state of where things are going, especially with the real estate and the insight, you can learn about how people collaborate, where they collaborate, how can we free up resources to make sure that collaboration happens more seamlessly is telling of where especially AI is going to take things in the future. I'm just curious, like what's been some of the feedback now? You mentioned an executive statement saying about how amazingly seamless it has been to go virtual. Curious to know if anything else from your perspective of what has been successful or what you've seen has been successful from comments from executives and other leaders about how things are going now at Under Armour because the teams are connected through collaboration.
Yeah, I try every week or so since we've been working remotely. I've been trying to put together a little package that I sent to my leadership, to our SVP of IT and all of the direct reports that kind of just speak to some facts and figures about how our technologies are being used, some of the things that we're working on with our commercial teams. So last week I sent my usual update, and one of the leadership team, IT leadership folks, kind of replied back to my email and said, "I can't thank you and your team enough." He said, "My team had to implement an upgrade, basically an SAP upgrade in Latin America, and we had no idea how we were going to do it. But through Webex Teams and Webex, it was flawless." He said everybody was 100%, informed. Nobody felt like they were out on a limb. It was just we were able to communicate and work as a team. He said probably even better than we might have been able to before. So I think from all sides, I think the creativity of our teammates and their willingness to kind of grab some of these tools and use them when they may not have been so familiar with them before. It's been really great to see all around, from kind of teammates to executives to, major IT implementations that have gone on. And we're only, really a month into it. So it's been really rewarding. And I said to you earlier, I kind of feel guilty about that, because we wouldn't have chosen this crisis to drive the kind of adoption that we're seeing ever at all. And like I said, I can't wait to get back to my office. But it is, the technology is what's pulled us through. Totally is what's pulled us through.
Well, it's been great, and Karen, we thank you for taking time out of your schedule to share with us some of those best practices. Right, this is what this virtual summit is all about: is to learn best practices, what other people are doing, And like you said, it's a journey, right? It's not that there's an end date.
Right.
Now we're going to reach this
Right.
and it's going to be done. It is a continuous journey that we're all learning and doing together. So, Karen,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming in and sharing this with us.
Oh, thank you. It was really fun. I appreciate the invitation.
So our next guest in this Workplace Transformation Future of Work Virtual Summit is Tony Romero, who is the supervising producer of Jimmy Kimmel Live. Now, as you all know, even our favorite talk shows have been affected by the current crisis that we're in. And those productions now have to occur from the homes of those talk show hosts. And we wanted to learn a little bit more about how that actually happens. So to dive into this a little bit more, let me introduce Corey Trifiletti, who sat down with Tony to learn about how the Jimmy Kimmel Live show is produced remotely. Corey, take it away.
So you have this unique situation that you're in right now. You produce a TV show, a nationally televised TV show, and you're doing it from home. So can you just tell the people who are watching a little bit about how that's affecting your day-to-day right now and the ability to put on the best show you can?
I mean, I think the current situation has sort of changed a lot of, what we do and how we do it and how we approach it. We've obviously changed the format of the show somewhat, although it's essentially the same. I mean, there's Jimmy's monologue and then there's the interview act. Obviously the big difference is none of this is happening in person. I mean, Jimmy's doing his monologue in the house and then we're working, we're using Webex to connect to, the guests at home who are then joining us. And then we're taking that material, we're sort of streaming it back to the studio via some of the gear that we have, which is some of the Cisco equipment that we've had a long partnership with you guys. And we're streaming that stuff back to the studio, and then we're editing, and then we're delivering the show in sort of the same standard way that we normally would. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how has it changed for the people who are working on the show outside? Are some of them still going into the office, or most of them working from home at this point?
The majority of the staff is working, and the crew that are working are all working from home. I think like in total, we have about 200 people between the staff and the crew. It's a big show. And I would say right now in studio, we may only have like 7 to 10 people, depending on the day. And then we have a couple of people who are helping at Jimmy's house, 2 guys specifically. And then everybody else is working remotely. We're doing all of our meetings, we're using conferencing software for all of our meetings. We're using a variety and a host of software and hardware to stream material, between the studio and then out to the producers so that we can watch the feed while it's going on and we can communicate with Jimmy. So there's a lot of that going on. There's really nobody except for, like guys people who are pushing buttons, like the button pushers who have to be there are there and an engineer. Other than that, everybody's home.
And I know that JKL and Cisco Webex have had a relationship for a pretty long time. So your teams were pretty much used to understanding how to work with Webex and use that in a production environment. And this is just an acceleration or an expansion of that, right?
Yeah, I think it really what it is. It's like a more creative application. We having familiarity with the equipment and having used it now for about 5 years, and working very closely with some of your team there. Like it's really given us the ability to sort of have customized equipment, which is nice. Although the majority of the gear that we use is pretty much off the shelf stuff. We have that expertise, and so when we're suddenly confronted with sort of this disruptive situation, we were able to pivot pretty quickly and sort of take the gear that we had and say like, okay, so how are we going to do this? We definitely had a bit of a leg up on everybody else, in that moment.
Mm-hmm. So were you able to turn around this change in production style pretty quickly?
We initially the show went into a repeat situation. I think mostly because we were concerned. There was a lot of news coverage, and I think the world kind of stopped for a second, and so we took a breather. But the next day, Jimmy had decided that he wanted to do like a mini log, he was calling it, like a small monologue from his house. And so he was doing that, off of like a laptop. and we were recording it, remotely in other places, and then we were pushing it to an editor to edit. And then it became apparent after about a week of that, maybe it was 2 weeks. It's hard to keep track of time, to be honest with you at this point. We decided, we realized we wanted to do, we wanted to up the production value. We were going to come back on the air with originals. And at that point, I think it was about 3 days. Like, we had to kind of come up with the plan. I mean, we'd been gestating it, but come up with the concrete plan, the signal flow, how we were going to do it. It was probably like 3 days, maybe 4 days, and then about a day of setup on site.
Got it.
So it was a pretty quick turnaround.
It seems like it. It seems like you guys had a pretty good plan in place, and you had some inkling of what you wanted to do. So that's excellent.
Yeah.
Now, with all these people working remotely, what have been some of the big challenges you've come across?
Well, I mean, the biggest challenge that you run into, it's funny. Well, you always have a certain segment of the population, probably not so much at Cisco, but definitely in other places where there are people just like can barely turn on their computers, right?
Yeah.
So you have that issue, although everybody's been pretty good about stuff. Obviously, it's a little more complicated with some of the stuff that we're doing than just, logging in. I think communication is the most difficult thing. In a weird way, it's almost handling an overabundance of communication. If that makes any sense. It's like suddenly you're getting 3 emails for everything instead of just one, because everybody's sort of like scrambling to everybody's intersecting in all sorts of places. And, there is a shorthand that exists from being in person, especially when you've been doing it like that for 20 years. So that shorthand disappears. It needs to be replaced by this sort of virtual replacement. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. And I think, strangely enough, that was probably the hardest thing to overcome. But I mean, it's working better now. I mean, processes just sort of start to fall into place. And then, we took our process, some of the process that we had at the show and then studio, over to sort of the virtual environment, if there's for lack of a better term, and adjust those things, the way that we distribute scripts, the way the scripts get written, the way the talking points happen, the way that we do rehearsals, the way that we do, it's use a host of, sort of stopgaps to make that happen.
Yeah, I can tell you, I know from our perspective that it used to be that you would have a lot of scheduled calls and scheduled communications with people. But to your point, those off-the-cuff conversations are also now happening on video, where you'll just get people calling in or sending out a link and say, hey, let's just jump on a line and have a quick conversation. So to your point, I find that it's cutting down on some of those other emails, and people are just more extemporaneously jumping into video calls. And you'll probably start seeing more and more of that too.
I think once it's settled down and the novelty of it sort of wore off, we started to see that. Like my team, I really sort of, my roots come from post-production, so we're very technically adept. We're a very technically adept team. So that on my team happened almost immediately. Like we set up systems where we could communicate between edit bays and different environments, and we got the people who were decision makers and some of the other producers logged in, and we created a virtual sort of control room where we could monitor the taping of the show. It's more like the other stuff that was a little bit more like the distribution of material, like things like that, where it took a little longer to catch up. But we're starting to see improvement. And you're right. I mean, I think for a lot of people on the show, there is a sort of shorthanded, communication via things like Webex to have conversations about things like right away. I mean, in one of the systems we have, people are basically just sitting in the room the whole time, and we use it to edit the show. They're communicating and looking at material. Let's make that change. Let's make this change. So, we're using it across a variety of places.
How has the experience been between Jimmy and his guests, or just for Jimmy and balancing his family with the show?
I think it's as crazy for him as it is for everybody else. He has 2 small children, who are there, and his wife Molly, who also works on the show, is, they're stuck in the house, so they're facing the same challenges. I don't know if you have kids. I have 3 myself and a bulldog, so it's like, it's kind of crazy, But I mean, he's taking it. He's the executive producer of the show, and he's really the creative force behind it. And so, we're all sort of collaborating on how to get this done and sort of following his voice and his vision. I think it is a little bit of a unique situation. I think it's a little harder on him, obviously, because there's just less on-site support. So I think there's that, but he's a pro. So like, once we get into the act of recording, it's almost like we're just in the studio. It just starts
I'm
to
sure your whole team is a team of pros, so they know what they're doing. This is a different way of working and different balance, but I'm sure that once they've got into the swing of it, it's been pretty clean.
Yeah. I mean, it really has been. I mean, I think you would think that it would be a lot. You would have thought that the disruption would have been much bigger. I think, and then there are people who have very specific jobs, and then you have people who are, the breadth of their job is a little bit wider, and I think people step into roles almost naturally in a weird way, where they can pick up sort of slack that pick up the pieces that aren't there because of this. You see a team of great people doing even greater work, which is always kind of inspiring.
Yeah. And this is a random question, but I'm curious if you had the same experience that I've seen a lot of people have, which is all these people, them in a work environment, but now you're working with them in their home environment. So you get a little bit of a glimpse into their lives and what makes them who they are. Is that helping you all to be a little more connected during this really strange time?
I think there's a lot of those like sort of funny things that happen. I think like, it's funny where I work, there's really just like a white wall behind me for the most part. Right now I'm in the kitchen, but like, it's like, so nobody sees into my world and everybody, except when one of my kids pops in or something with the dog, but people are like, what's going on there, man? Like, why are you against that wall? What's up, dude? Like, where are you? So it's like, that's funny. I was on a meeting. We were on a big meeting with sort of our, for lack of a better term, they call it the senior cabinet. It's like all the producers and stuff. And one of the bookers, there was like a drum set behind her, because her husband, musician, and had a studio. And we were having the meeting, and I sent her a text, and I was like, I like your awesome drum set. Like, it's so rock and roll. It's like everything in that room is so rock and roll. You would have thought that, right? So it is kind of funny. It's kind of fun, Yeah,
it gives you a good glimpse into the personalities of the people you work with.
Absolutely. And it's like, yeah, and you're seeing them in that real environment. You're not necessarily seeing them in the work environment. So yeah, there's an interesting sort of there's an interesting sort of thing going on there for sure.
Do you foresee any other large challenges coming down the road over the next couple of weeks, or do you guys think that you've pretty much hit the stream and you're moving?
Well, I mean, the creative world always has there's always some disruption. I mean, somebody's going to want to change something or do something crazy, right? So it's only a matter of time before that comes up. I mean, we're starting to hit our stride a little bit more as far as like the day to day, but yeah, there'll be things. It's just the nature of the show, and I think it's really going to come from, it's a competitive environment too. And, we want to create engaging, fun content, not just barely get the show on the air. That's not what we're doing. Maybe there are other shows that are doing it differently, but not us. I mean, we want to make a show. So, there's going to be creative challenges that come up. Our writers are producing stuff, and we need to sit down and figure out how to make it happen if we can.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that some of the people on your team are going to see this. There's going to be a lot of other people that see this. Is there anything you want to give as a message to those folks during this time?
You mean on my team?
Yeah.
Everybody's doing a great job. It's great to watch everybody sort of rise to it and be able to take, a crazy disruptive environment. And they've done, a better work than I've seen them do ever on the show in a weird way, as far as juggling tons of responsibilities and really putting in like a lot of hard hours. And I think it shows, I think people are responding to it. I mean, there's a lot of people in town who are asking us like, hey, so what are you guys doing over there? How are you doing that? So like, it's always a good sign,
Oh yeah. Well, I've watched it and I've been seeing what he's been doing and what you guys have been putting out, and it's been high quality and entertaining as usual. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for keeping it alive.
Thank you for watching.
Absolutely. And that's about it for today. So Tony, thank you very much for spending some time and giving us a little bit of chance to talk, and for continuing to partner with us and with Webex. And we hope everything continues to work as smoothly as it has been.
Oh yeah, thank you guys. And thanks. You're really helping us make it happen in a huge way. So I have to extend my thanks and the thanks of the entire team to what Cisco's done for us. And again, yeah, it's a great partnership. It's been something that's given a lot to the show over the last few years, and it keeps on going. So we're really happy with it. Thank you.
that wraps up day 3 of our virtual summit. I want to thank all those who joined me today from these organizations as they talked about the best practices of remote work. And as a reminder, if you want to see any of these interviews and these videos on demand, go to thefutureofwork.webex.com. And also, don't forget to join us tomorrow on day 4 of the virtual summit as we learn a little bit more about the contact center of the future and about how agents can work remotely. I look forward to seeing you then. Bye, everyone.